The studio lights blazed as the live broadcast cut to Donald Trump, seated confidently in the center chair, his signature smirk fixed on his face. The host leaned forward. "Mr. Trump, is it true you confronted Prime Minister Netanyahu?" Without hesitation, Trump straightened his tie and said, "Not only did I confront him, I scolded him. Right there, in front of everyone." The audience gasped, unsure if they were hearing political candor or another show of bravado. Across the stage, Denzel Washington's brow furrowed. His hands, clasped in front of him, slowly uncurled. "You're telling me," he said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of disbelief, "that you looked Netanyahu in the eye, and scolded him?" The air in the studio seemed to freeze. Trump leaned back, feigning nonchalance. "That's exactly what I'm saying. Nobody talks to world leaders the way I do." Denzel chuckled, not with amusement, but with sharp incredulity. "Yeah, because that's not how diplomacy works. And forgive me if I don't take that as gospel truth." The crowd shifted in their seats, sensing the tension sharpening like a blade. Cameras zoomed in on Denzel, whose expression made it clear he wasn't buying a word of Trump's claim. "Sounds more like a headline than a history lesson," Denzel added, his tone now carrying a sting. Trump's jaw tightened. "So you're calling me a liar?" he asked. The host's eyes darted between them, realizing they were sitting on a powder keg about to ignite. Denzel didn't blink. "I'm saying the truth doesn't bend just because it makes for good TV." The control room scrambled, cutting to a wide shot as the studio audience erupted, half in applause, half in shock. The atmosphere had shifted from a political interview to a clash of egos that could spin out of control at any second. And the night was just getting started. The host tried to steer the conversation back to policy, but the tension had already set like concrete. Trump, never one to let a challenge slide, leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. "Denzel, you weren't in the room. You don't know the pressure, the politics, the deals on the table." His tone carried that familiar mix of defiance and condescension. Denzel's eyes narrowed slightly, his voice still steady but laced with steel. "You're right, I wasn't in the room. But I've been in enough rooms with powerful men to know when a story's been dressed up for the cameras. This feels like one of those." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The studio's big screen flashed clips of Trump at past international events, shaking hands with Netanyahu, smiling for the press. No sign of confrontation, no visible scolding. The contrast between Trump's claim and the images only deepened the tension. Trump smirked, waving a dismissive hand toward the footage. "The cameras don't show everything. Sometimes the real action happens off camera." Denzel let a beat of silence stretch, his gaze locked on Trump. "Or sometimes. It never happened at all." The remark hit the air like a gavel striking wood. The host looked visibly uncomfortable now. This was no longer an interview, it was a cross-examination. Trump adjusted his cufflinks, visibly bristling. "You think I need to lie about standing up to Netanyahu? I've stood up to everyone, China, NATO, the media. Ask anyone." Denzel shook his head slowly. "It's not about who you stood up to. It's about whether the story you're selling is the truth, or just another performance." The audience clapped and booed in equal measure, a chaotic mix that only fueled the heat in the room. Every camera in the studio was locked on the two men, each unwilling to blink, each daring the other to back down. And then Denzel leaned in, his voice dropping just enough to pull the entire audience to the edge of their seats. "If you really said what you claim, prove it." Trump's jaw tightened, the faint smile now gone. He straightened his posture, looking every bit the man used to commanding the room. "I don't have to prove anything to you, Denzel," he said, his voice louder now, as if volume alone could seal the argument. "The people who matter already know what happened." Denzel leaned back slightly, but his eyes never left Trump's. "That's convenient," he said, letting the sarcasm seep into each syllable. "The people who matter? Or the people who won't call you out when you bend the truth?" A sharp gasp came from someone in the front row. The studio lighting seemed hotter, the air heavier. The host shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearly wishing for a commercial break that wasn't coming anytime soon. Trump jabbed a finger in Denzel's direction. "You're questioning my word? I've got decades of negotiations under my belt. World leaders respect me. They know I don't back down." Denzel didn't flinch. Respect and fear aren't the same thing. And making a claim on live TV without proof, that's not leadership. That's theater. The audience erupted again, half of them cheering, half booing, and all of them glued to the verbal chess match unfolding. Trump shook his head, chuckling bitterly. "You're an actor. You live in a world of scripts and cameras. Don't try to lecture me about reality." Denzel leaned forward, voice steady but now edged with fire. "Exactly. I know what a script looks like. And right now, yours has more fiction than fact." That line landed like a gut punch. Even the cameras seemed to lean in. Somewhere behind the set, a producer mouthed to the crew, "Don't cut. Stay with this." Trump adjusted his tie, the smirk returning, though it seemed forced. "Careful, Denzel. Some truths are too big for prime time." Denzel smiled faintly, tilting his head. "Or maybe, some lies are too small to survive it." The studio was electric now, every word, every glance between them thick with the kind of tension that made headlines before the credits even rolled. The tension in the studio was razor-sharp now. Every camera locked on Trump and Denzel, every microphone catching the smallest shift in tone. The host had gone silent, reduced to a spectator like everyone else. Denzel leaned forward again, elbows on the desk, eyes fixed like a laser. "You're telling millions of people that you stood up to Netanyahu," he said, voice low but cutting, "yet somehow, there's not one shred of evidence. No footage. No transcript. Not even a whisper from Israel. That's interesting." Trump's lips pressed into a thin line. He waved a dismissive hand. "Not everything happens in front of the cameras, Denzel. Some things are done behind closed doors, man to man." Denzel didn't blink. "Then why bring it to this camera?" He gestured to the lens staring them down. "Why parade it like a trophy if it's just a story you can't back up?" A ripple of murmurs moved through the audience. Someone in the third row muttered, "He's got a point," and it wasn't clear whose side they were on anymore. Trump straightened in his seat, but the flicker of irritation was visible now. "You know what your problem is?" he said, his voice climbing. "You think because you've got applause and Oscars, you can question a president's credibility." Denzel let the words hang for a moment, then replied with calm precision. "No, I think because I've lived through leaders lying to my face, I have to question it." The audience exploded into cheers and whistles. Even a few crew members couldn't help but clap before remembering they were supposed to be invisible. Trump glanced at the host, searching for an ally, but the host just raised his hands as if to say, "You're on your own." Denzel's voice dropped again, slow and deliberate. "If you really told Netanyahu what you claim, prove it. Show us the receipts. Otherwise," he leaned back in his chair, "we'll chalk this up as another piece of primetime fiction." That last line hit like a hammer. Trump's jaw tightened, his hand gripping the arm of his chair just a little too hard. The air was thick, the kind of moment where even the audience forgot to breathe. The silence after Denzel's last sentence was deafening. You could almost hear the soft buzz of the stage lights overhead. Trump shifted in his chair, and for the first time that night, he didn't have an immediate comeback. Denzel leaned in again, closing the space between them just enough to make it personal. "This isn't about politics," he said, his tone firm but calm. "It's about truth. And if you think the American people can't smell a made-up story from a mile away, you're underestimating them." Trump gave a dry laugh, trying to break the tension. "You know, Hollywood's taught you well, drama, suspense, maybe you should stick to scripts." Denzel didn't flinch. "Maybe you should stop writing them." The audience erupted, half in cheers, half in gasps. The host's eyes darted between the two men like a referee unsure if he should step in. But Denzel wasn't done. "You're asking us to believe you went toe-to-toe with one of the most powerful leaders in the world," he continued, his voice gaining force, "yet the only person saying it happened, is you. No reporters. No advisors. No one from Israel. Just you and your word." Trump sat back, arms crossed. "And my word should be enough," he shot back. Denzel let a beat pass, then shook his head slowly. "Not anymore. Not after everything this country's been through. Words without proof are just noise." The crowd roared again, the energy almost shaking the walls. Someone yelled, "Tell him, Denzel," from the back, and it only seemed to fuel him. "You want the respect of the people?" Denzel said, locking eyes with Trump. "Then give them respect first. Show them evidence. Give them truth. Otherwise, you're not a leader, you're a storyteller." The audience reaction was electric, like they'd just witnessed a turning point. Trump's jaw tightened, his hand drumming on the armrest in frustration. The camera zoomed in on Denzel, whose expression stayed cool and unshaken. It was clear who had control of the room now. Trump tried to lean into the microphone, but Denzel was already speaking, his voice steady and cutting through the tension like a blade. "You say you scolded Netanyahu," Denzel began, pausing just long enough for the crowd to hang on his words, "but every time someone asks for proof, you change the subject. Why is that?" Trump smirked, shifting in his seat. "Because I don't owe you, or anyone, proof when I know the truth." That was the moment Denzel leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on Trump like a predator sizing up his target. "That's exactly the problem," he said. "You think leadership is about you. About what you know. But leadership is about trust, and trust isn't a gift, it's earned." The crowd broke into loud applause, and a few people in the front row even stood. The host looked like he was witnessing history, his fingers nervously tapping the desk. "Let me tell you something," Denzel continued, his voice deepening. "When you make claims that can affect international relations, you don't get to hide behind ego. You either back it up or you shut it down. Because every lie, every half-truth, costs this country credibility we can't afford to lose." Trump tried to interject. "Are you calling me a liar?" Denzel didn't blink. "I'm saying if the shoe fits, wear it." The studio exploded, some with laughter, others with gasps, but no one could look away. The tension between them was like static in the air, and the cameras caught every flicker of expression on Trump's face. For a split second, Trump's confident mask slipped, and the irritation was clear. But before he could respond, Denzel added, "You can fool a crowd for a night. But history always keeps receipts." The audience went wild, chanting Denzel's name. Even the host struggled to restore order, realizing the moment had turned into something far bigger than a simple interview. The studio's energy shifted. You could feel it, like the collective breath before a storm. Denzel leaned back in his chair, but his eyes stayed fixed on Trump. "You say you told off Netanyahu," Denzel said, voice calm but loaded, "but here's the thing, I actually spoke to people in that same room you claim you were in." The audience immediately erupted in murmurs. Trump tilted his head, his expression tightening. "And guess what?" Denzel continued, "They say it never happened. Not the way you tell it. No shouting. No scolding. Just polite handshakes and a photo op." Trump scoffed. "Fake news. They're lying. You believe them over me?" Denzel didn't flinch. "I believe patterns. And your pattern is simple, big words, big claims, no receipts." The crowd roared at that, and the camera caught Trump's jaw tightening, the smirk slipping further away. "That's why I'm asking you, right here, right now," Denzel pressed, leaning toward the mic, "if you're telling the truth, release the transcript. Release the video from that meeting. Because if you did what you say you did, it's the easiest win of your life. Unless, of course, you didn't." The challenge hung in the air like a loaded weapon. The audience gasped and leaned in, hungry for Trump's answer. Trump glanced toward the host, clearly buying himself a few seconds. You think I'm scared to show proof? You think I don't have it? He said, voice rising. Denzel smiled, not kindly, but like a man who knew exactly where this was going. I don't think you're scared, he replied. I think you're bluffing. The reaction was deafening. People were on their feet, some shouting, others laughing, but all eyes were locked on Trump. And for the first time all night, he didn't have the silence was brutal, thick enough to make even the cameras feel heavy. Trump's lips pressed together, his gaze darting between the host, the audience, and Denzel, searching for an escape hatch that wasn't there. Denzel leaned forward, elbows on the table, his voice dropping low enough to make everyone lean in. You know what the difference is between telling a story and telling the truth? He paused just long enough for the tension to coil tighter. One fades when you turn the lights on. The audience erupted, cheers, claps, even a few whistles cutting through the air. The host's eyebrows shot up, sensing the moment had shifted entirely. Trump raised a finger, ready to jump back in, but Denzel wasn't finished. You brag about standing up to a man like Netanyahu. But strength isn't a story, it's a record. And your record? Well, it's more photo shoots than principles. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in the front row mouthed, "Oh my God," while a man behind her just shook his head, grinning like he couldn't believe what he was witnessing. Trump's jaw moved, but no words came. That alone felt like a headline. Denzel sat back, letting the noise swell, letting the cameras drink in every reaction. He knew the power of the pause, and right now, he owned the room. If you want credit for bravery, he said finally, you're gonna have to actually be brave. The host tried to cut to commercial, but the audience booed at the interruption. They wanted more, needed more. And Trump? He stayed locked in place, his hands gripping the desk a little too tightly, eyes fixed on Denzel like the only way out was straight through him. A ready comeback. The studio air felt electric, like the charge before a lightning strike. Trump straightened in his chair, clearly trying to reclaim control. You don't know the whole story, he said, his tone a mix of defiance and desperation. Denzel tilted his head, his eyes narrowing just enough to send a chill across the room. Then tell it, he challenged. Tell the whole story. Not the headline you think sounds good. The real one. A hush fell. The camera zoomed in on Trump's face, every flicker of discomfort broadcast in high definition. He cleared his throat, shifted in his seat, and started to speak, but Denzel didn't give him the chance. You see, Denzel continued, when you say you stood up to someone like Netanyahu, people expect more than a soundbite. They expect proof. They expect courage that can be verified, not courage that disappears when the meeting room doors close. The audience roared in approval. Someone yelled, "Tell him, Denzel," while another shouted, "Receipts." The noise swelled, feeding Denzel's momentum. Trump tried again, "I don't have to prove anything to you." "Yes, you do," Denzel cut in, his voice sharp and unyielding. "Because you didn't just tell me that story, you told America. And when you talk to America, you're talking to every soldier who's fought, every family who's sacrificed, every citizen who's counting on their leaders to be more than just actors reading lines." Trump's mouth tightened. The host looked between them, sensing this was no longer just a heated exchange, it was a dismantling in real time. Denzel leaned back, his gaze never leaving Trump. "You want to be the man who stood up to Netanyahu?" His voice dropped to a near whisper, forcing the room to lean in. "Then start by standing up to the truth." The applause hit like a wave, drowning out Trump's attempt to respond. The cameras captured it all, the look in Trump's eyes, the smirk on Denzel's face, and the undeniable fact that the room had already decided who won this round. The applause slowly faded, but the tension stayed thick enough to cut with a knife. Trump shifted in his seat, his eyes darting toward the cameras as if searching for an escape route. Denzel sat forward, elbows on the table, his tone low but carrying the weight of the entire exchange. "Donald," he began, "America doesn't need bedtime stories. It needs leaders who face the truth, even when it's ugly, even when it costs them. Trump opened his mouth, but Denzel's hand came up, not to silence him with force, but to hold the floor with presence alone. You said you scolded Netanyahu, Denzel continued. If that's true, prove it. If it's not, then you owe every person watching this an apology for treating politics like it's a stage play. The studio was silent. Even the host had frozen, sensing the gravity of the moment. The audience leaned in, eyes locked on Denzel. And let me be crystal clear, Denzel said, his voice now a measured burn. The truth doesn't bend for power, it doesn't flinch for applause, and it sure as hell doesn't change because you think it sounds good. He leaned back, letting the words hang in the air. So which is it, Mr. President? The truth, or the performance? Trump's lips pressed into a thin line, his silence speaking louder than any rebuttal. The cameras caught every flicker of unease, every beat of hesitation. The audience erupted, not with laughter, but with raw, thundering approval. Chants of "truth, truth" filled the studio. Denzel gave a small nod, stood up, and without waiting for a sign-off, walked toward the exit. His final line was still echoing through the room, destined to flood headlines and social media feeds within minutes. Leaders don't invent history, they make it. And in that moment, everyone knew the story wasn't about Netanyahu anymore. It was about a man calling out the script, and the world deciding to listen. You can dress it up as diplomacy, you can sell it as leadership, but when the cameras are off, the truth still stands naked. Tonight, we've seen that words can shake a room, but facts can shake the world. No matter how high the title, no matter how powerful the position, no one is above the truth. And the truth is coming for everyone.